Welcome to the Pinhole Cast-on. In this video we're going to see how to do a pinhole cast-on using 8 stitches and worked using 5 double-pointed needles. The first thing you want to do is arrange your yarn. You want your tail yarn on one side of your hand and your working yarn on the other. Using your working yarn, create a loop around 2 of your fingers. Do not create a slip knot as you would normally do when starting a piece of knitting. Instead, hold the 2 pieces of yarn together. In your right hand, hold your needle as if you're going to knit, and also hold your yarn in the same way. Insert the tip of your needle through the loop that you have created. Wrap your yarn around the needle as if to knit. Bring that loop of yarn back through the other loop. Tighten the stitch. You then use your working yarn in your right hand and take it over the top of the needle. You then pinch the first stitch you created and pull that over to create the final stitch. And that's one stitch created using the pinhole method. Again, insert the tip of your needle, using your thumb to hold it if you need to. Wrap your yarn knitwise, bring it back through, pinch your stitch to hold it, bring your yarn around the top of the needle, lift the stitch over the other stitch, and that creates your second stitch. Again, tighten these up. Next, insert again, go around knitwise, bring it through, pinch your stitch to hold it, over the needle with your yarn, and then lift the stitch again. 3 stitches. I first learned how to do this technique using a crochet hook. It never settled into my mind and I never really got it. I then learned how to do it using 2 needles, so instead of using my left hand I would use a needle in place of it. But again, I found that a little bit fiddly, and I find I have much better control when using my left hand as opposed to another needle. It gives me a bit more stability. I think that this will hopefully work for you as well. You keep working until you've cast on the 8 stitches that you want in your pinhole cast-on. You don't have to do 8, you can use 12 and other multiples, but for this example I'm going to do 8. Once you've created all of the stitches that you want, you can use your tail yarn to tighten up the pinhole, and this is where it gets its name. That is the front and this is the back, where you have the little bumps along it, and because you're working in the round, which we're about to join to do, those are the pieces, this stitches here are what will face you. So now you're ready to distribute to your double pointed needles. I work with 4 double pointed needles holding my stitches and knitting with the 5th. You can also distribute your stitches to a circular needle if you're doing it using magic loop. I normally start my pinhole cast-ons using a double pointed needle, then go to a short circular and then onwards to a long circular, but that's a personal preference and you are most welcome to use whatever needles suit you best. I distribute my pinhole cast-on of 8 stitches across my 4 double pointed needles. If you haven't worked with double pointed needles before, this can be quite fiddly and it might not be the best technique to be the first one you try with double pointeds, but if you've worked with double pointeds before, definitely give this a go. Once you've distributed them, you can use your tail yarn to further close your pinhole cast-on. You are now ready to continue working in the round. So you position your needles to make sure that your working yarn is ready to work the first stitch of the round. Make sure you work with your working yarn and not your tail. One of the keys here is to make sure that you're knitting the stitches in the right order from the needle that they're on. It will be very easy for one of your needles to flip over here and for you to knit the stitches in the wrong order. If you aren't used to working with double pointed needles, I find that starting with bamboo needles or other wooden needles like I'm using here is quite useful, as they are less slippery, I find, than metal needles. And here I'm just going to show you what it would look like if your stitches were twisted. So make sure that they're in the right order. This gets a lot less fiddly once you have some more stitches on the needles. Another tip, if you're not used to working with double pointeds, is to slide your stitches, once you're finished working them, into the middle of the needle that you've just worked them onto. This keeps your needles in position and helps prevent them falling out, although sometimes they will just fall out of their own accord, no matter how well positioned your stitches are. You continue working around until you've worked your first full round. And again, you can use your tail to give it a slight pull and make sure your pinhole cast on is really well secure. And you can just see how neat it is there in the center. If I wanted to mark the first needle, I have two choices. I could either place a removable stitch marker to mark the first needle, or I could place a stitch marker in between some of the stitches. The instructions for the pattern that goes with this cast on suggests that you place markers. Don't place markers if you're using double pointeds, although you can. It's easier to use your needle tips to indicate where you are in the round rather than using markers where you might mark in one stitch from the end of the needle. I'm now just going to work a full round of the pattern, which is increasing using a yarn over stitch. And now you can see what the work looks like when you have done a full round. Pinhole cast-on is really useful in that it's a really tidy, neat way of starting pieces that are worked from the center. You can use this in circles, squares, star-shaped shawls. It really is a really super versatile cast-on. Definitely worth practicing. It can be a bit fiddly to get at first, but definitely worth it.